Hey barbarians, what's up? Thank you for passing by. My name is Phil and I am from Mints and Drops. And today I'm having the pleasure to receive on the show, on the mic, on the camera, my brother Ryan from Alienz. We've talked about an array of things, but most especially his creative process. What's coming up, of course, with his entire artistic journey, which is absolutely amazing. The guy is also a musician. I mean, stop, full send, whatever, absolutely Slayer. We've had an amazing exchange. Enjoy. Ryan, thank you so much for passing by today on the show, man. How are you?
Hey man, thank you as always, Phil. It's always great to get together and chat with you. So excited as always.
It's really fun having you on the show, man. And it's been a while since we talked, and you've had this great idea that we do this special podcast, this special show, directly for the creative process that we have, right?
Yeah, it's something that I focus a lot on in my classroom and just as an individual. It's the creation process is really complex and it's different for everyone. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about what it looks like for me, and hopefully some people can add some stuff into their own workflow.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, because there's always this kind of because it's there's a piece of that that's magical, right? There's a piece of that that requires you to hold on to it, but at the same time let go. And yeah, I wanted to know how does how are you putting yourself inside that creative process? How does it come to you?
It's a good place to get started with it, right? It's something I tell my students and try to remind myself of a lot, even when I go through my own kind of creative droughts, if you will. Is that everyone is creative. We're all like humans are wired creatively. It's part of how our brains work. It's part of our survival instincts. It's just a lot of people start to self-judge their creativity at some point. One of my favorite quotes is, if you ask a kindergarten class, who in here can draw, or who in here is a good artist? You'll see literally the entire class raise their hands. Whereas if you ask a high school classroom the same thing, you might see one or two people raise their hands, and they will be some of the most talented artists that you've ever met in your life. So at some point we enter this age where we're, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, where we feel judgment towards our art process. And I think a lot of people literally quit all art for the rest of time at that point. They say, I suck, I can't draw, I can't do that. And
That's terrible.
And then they close that they close their minds around the idea of that they are creative. And then just like anything else in life, right? Like as soon as your mind is closed to that concept, it's true. You're no longer creative at that point because you've shut off that the valve, if you will.
Yeah. And that's applicable, right, to every single artistic situation where it can be drawing. I know that you're heavy into music too. We can have a go at it on this specific subject, but it's crazy how growing older we do not believe into our own artistic path because it takes time and fails on fail, man, to become, at least to be satisfied for this precise piece of time, right? And then after that you move on to something else.
Yeah, that's a big piece of it. I think most artists are held back by this idea of perfection. And it's something that I personally experienced, I think, for the first 20 years of my creative life. I would say I didn't start to really produce creative content until I was 25 or so. But I've been an artist and creative my whole life. I think what happens is that people see their parents and they see their teachers and they see all these people telling them that, like, no, art is not worth your time. Like this is not something that professional people do with their time. So I think it's really important, and something I do as a teacher in my classroom is like, you have to show young people, and this is called modeling in the teaching world, right? But like, show them that it's okay to be an adult and do art. And then same thing with my kids. Like you promote that process. You make them feel like that time is worthwhile. You're not wasting your time when you're sitting there drawing. And I think that's a message that a lot of artists get, even really talented ones. Oh, well, you're very good at this, but what are you going to do for your real life? Right. And I think that creates a lot of opportunity for people to say, okay, well, art's not a realistic option for me, even though in many cases it is. My talent levels are solid, right? But like, there are people that you'll meet that you're like, you have the most natural talent I've ever seen at this. And, they say, what is it? How does it, I forget exactly how the saying goes. Basically along the lines of talent's a dime a dozen. You can go to LA right now and find 1,000 amazingly talented artists, but like which one of them will be successful? It's the people that see themselves as artists, right?
Mhm. I've had a chat with Betty Hattie on the show earlier this week, and we've talked about, of course, the educational sphere of things, and that falls right into it, in my opinion, because, and I have a daughter too, of course, people know, and but that's when I try to tell her all the time, she's making of course, a drawing, she hands it back to me, and she says, well, it's in French, but still, she says, do you think it's pretty? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, wow. I mean, yes, for me. And then she looks at me in disarray, like not believing me at all. I'm like, yeah, but do you believe it's pretty? That's the whole thing, man. And after that, you iterate on it. Or when she does a new animal to draw, I'm like, okay, a tiger. Okay, where do you start? Oh, it's not looking great. Well, it's gonna take steps, and it lost. So this whole magical sphere tends to vanish, unfortunately, I believe, as we grow older, and because we just stop because we're not there. We do not have this magical spot that takes so much time, and yeah, that's unfortunate in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a piece of it is even the best artists in the world. I view creativity as like a cup, right? It's something that I think about a lot, right? It's we all have creative energy, just like we have physical energy or spiritual energy, or I consider it kind of its own pool of energy, right? And
Yeah.
the idea there being that you only have so much, and I definitely want to talk about some ways that we can kind of refill that cup, or some things that work for me. The idea there being like we all are going to feel empty as creators at times, and my number one advice when people feel like that is just take a break. And I know it sounds some people are incapable of taking a break, right? It's like, oh, if I don't create this, once a day, 5 pieces a day, 10 pieces a day, like
Yeah.
the world's going to implode. But really, in a lot of cases, people would be best suited to take some time to not. It's like you're running around your car on empty. It's just I see so many people in the Web3 space just straight up burn out, and you can kind of even predict it when it's going to happen. You're like, yo, this dude cannot keep this up, or this woman cannot keep up this pace.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we look at our creative energy as a resource that we have to choose how to spend.
Because there's no real at least numerical value that we can put on it, like say, okay, I'm at the top, or today, wow, I'm because of course you felt it even honed to a bigger extent than me, for sure, like in terms of drawings or whatever that you do, that you create, that when you have it and it flows and you do have it, that has a value 100%, man. And no matter the artistic venues that you're doing, there's a value to this that the 5 senses maybe are not capable of, I don't know, maybe comprehending or whatever the case may be, but there's a value to this. And I wanted to ask you, once you feel that, the day that you come up and it just booms, it's a straight line. How do you manage, if at all, to stay in that flow status where, okay, I got it.
Yeah, you're talking about something that is one of my passions. It's something I genuinely study, is this concept of flow. I love that you're bringing it up in just the way that I think about it, and it's important to remember it's not just art that we can have these kind of experiences with, right? Like you can be in flow like while you're driving down the road, right? It's this idea of living like in the moment, and truly being mindful of your living experience is that idea of flow. So I think what happens is with art, there are certain times in our lives where those walls kind of all come down. We're not judging our own art the way that we normally would. There are days where I look at my stuff and I'm like, this sucks, and it's or like I'll see stuff and I'll be like, every artist I've ever met goes through this imposter syndrome process where you're like, is this all like pure luck, or like, do I actually suck at this? Like, I've never met a single artist that doesn't go through those experiences. So it's really weird because we go on this roller coaster where we at times are in flow and can, at least for me, when I'm like that, I am very, to be honest, hot and cold with my creating. Like when I'm hot, I will create enough stuff for like a month. Like I won't sleep. I become like legit manic. And like I'll create all night. I'll do stuff like that. And it's not necessarily healthy, and it's against that idea of that cup, right? But
Yeah.
there's also this idea that you have as a creator that like when you're producing and it's coming out right and you love it, and it's like you kind of want to strike while the iron's hot. You're like,
Yeah.
I can't miss this opportunity for my creative process. But then I always find that when I do that, I'm mentally and creatively cooked for 2 or 3 weeks. So again, there's a pro and con that comes with working like that.
You've mentioned it does come from a spot where you're vulnerable, right? Because a big example is, shout out to Vicente when we talk about music. Because especially if you're producing or you're inside this realm of, you're in your studio or whatever, if you have ideas or whatever, you have to be able to put them out and just feel free to put yourself inside that zone where you're producing or you're creating something. Like, say, singing. This is so personal. You're singing. Someone goes off like, "Oh yeah, this sucks," or whatever. You're gonna put barriers right away, or this riffs of guitar or whatever, how it works. I'm not a guitar player, but I can imagine it. Or drums or whatever. This is the same creative process. Same thing when somebody's watching you draw or whatever. And the next point, and I will lead up to a third one, is that it's not healthy up to a certain point, of course, like to be, you're grinding, and I can imagine you. I see in your eyes, and that's amazing. That's craft, man. That's dedication. That's erosion. It's resistance. That's where art comes from. And in correlation, how do you take all this and put it inside, because you're a teacher, and put it inside the academic level? How do you bring that up to your students, man? Because you know that you have to say the right things, like eat well, eat your vegetables, but at the same time, it's gonna get grindy out there.
So I truly love teaching. I feel like I'm meant to do it. It's ever since there are days that are really hard. Like I just got back from school, half an hour ago or something. My last class was straight up just driving me nuts. But something I think that's important to know as a teacher is you're not going to affect 100% of people, just like your art is not going to affect 100% of people. I have amazingly talented friends, and they have just as many haters as everybody else. I was actually a musician before I ever did any kind of visual art. I played in reggae bands in college, and I've got some buddies who are really, really good. I have a buddy who's signed out in LA, and it's
guitar you played, right?
Yeah, I play guitar and I sing. I was in like an a cappella group in college, and band. We won our college's battle of the bands like 4 years in a row, and it was fun. It was some of the most fun, creative, artistic times of my life. But
that's precious.
Art is not. It's certainly vulnerable, but I think more than that, it's truthful. I guess it's not always vulnerable, but it's always truthful. Because sometimes, and I guess we could explore what we mean by creative vulnerability, right? It's like the happiest parts of our soul, the saddest parts of our soul. Like those are things that I think are aching to get out. There's a really good, I'm an English teacher, so I was an English major in college. And a quote I think of a lot about the creative process is that it's by Maya Angelou. And it's that we all have a story inside of us just dying to get out. Right. Like that's just part of being a human being. We want to be seen, and we want to express ourselves. And if you can find a medium like art where you can really, and it's funny, I get like goosebumps when I really feel that, like what that really feels like for a person. Right. And I've dealt with really bad anxiety issues in my life. And I truly feel like without art, I would not be where I am mentally, spiritually, emotionally. It helps me process things that I don't think I could understand otherwise. Right. So it's like through this process, you might read a story you wrote or see a painting you did or a song you wrote. And you're like, yeah, that's a sad song, man. Like, and like, you might not even realize when you started that process, that's what you wanted to get out. So when I talk to students, it's exactly that. It's find something you like. I know it sounds silly, but like I literally I start with coloring sheets. Yeah. So like I literally start with coloring sheets. Everyone can color. So we start there. It's like this very relaxing visual process, but I'll encourage people to then take these other steps. Like, what is it that fires you up? Like, and then you'll see people just have these natural inclinations towards art forms. And I think that's just our spirit, it's, that's our intuition, like as human beings, right? It's like, if you really want to paint, like for whatever reason, your whole life, you wanted to paint. My question to anyone watching would be like, what's stopping you? right? So like you've had this itch for like years. I really want to learn how to paint. Like, why don't you just go buy some paints and try, right? It's like, you're going to suck. Like, just
Yeah,
know that
yeah,
you're going to be terrible. But
yeah.
like, that's the process, right? It's like,
Hmm.
same thing. I can't tell you how many people I'll meet that's, oh, I really wish I could play an instrument. I'll be like, why don't you learn? And they'll be like, oh, I don't know. And it's like, oh, well, if you really want it, and if it's been bugging you for 10 years, just try it. You know what I mean? And that's what the creative process looks like for students. It's, you're just
Yeah,
kind of nudging them up a hill, right? And then
yeah.
I always ask for products. I'll say, hey, make me a piece of art. Or if it's someone that does music, I'll say, hey, record me a song and send me a song by next week or something. And
Wow. Do they
people
do
want
it?
an audience. Yeah, they want an audience. That's what artists want, to be seen and heard.
Yeah. Do you have some students who respond to the call and they send you some music or tracks, whatever?
Yeah, I had a kid produce an entire rap album in my class one year. He would like come in and
Wow.
do all the beats in class, and he'd do the raps.
Wow.
I do this thing called Art to Start every day. So it's like 15 minutes of any kind of creative time that you want to do.
Mm.
And I've seen some crazy stuff. I had a girl finish a novel. I had people get published in art magazines. I've had
Wow.
poets. I've had people build computers. Art is complex and it's varied.
Yeah.
And I think we have to remember that art comes in many, many, many forms.
Hmm.
More than I think most people
Yeah,
acknowledge.
like that for sure, or even know. I saw the tweet that you made today, especially about the drawing. That I believe it's one of your students who made it. I mean, wow. I mean, that's
Yeah.
manifestation of just just his own stuff. And same thing for me, man. Inside, for me, in the kitchen. I just left the kitchen. Actually, last week. 20 years, man. I said, this is this is it. And what I believe was at least a great career. At the same time, every single occasion, I believe I was creating like menus, recipes, amazing plates. Again, this is subjective, but still, I was super tired. I was down in the trench because for me, it's erosion. It's definitely resistance when I'm tired for a long period of time and it's tough and you have stresses and you're putting out covers and it's on and on. You have guests, degustation menus going on and on. So this always came to me in terms of flow when I felt like the wall was so close behind and I had nothing else to lean on. So I was like, okay, well, the way is forward. That's the only thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I worked in restaurants for like 6 or 7 years when I was in college. So yeah, I know that. I was always a server, but I know that grind. I know how stressful it gets. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's artistic. I think for me, before I was a teacher, I worked as a corporate artist. So like basically, I did posters and digital design type stuff, and that's always been my skill set. But I felt exactly like you did. Remember when we talk about that cup, right? It's we only have so much creativity to go
Yeah.
around. So now that you're so involved in your creation process through videos and just social media content and blah blah blah, it's like you probably felt like it was pulling at your creativity in a way that and again, I'm not certain with this obviously, but that's how I felt when I was in the corporate world, and I had to do all this design for the corporation I was working for.
Mm-hmm.
Do this, do that, like, and then I send them something I'm really proud of, and they're like, oh, that kind of sucks. Change this, change that, change
Oh,
it, and it's this very draining process. And I got to the point where I couldn't create anything of my
yeah,
own
for sure. For
anymore.
sure.
I got home
Yeah.
and I would want to sit down and play stupid video games and do literally nothing. And that was a big part of
Yeah.
why I left. I left
Yeah,
that
because what
career.
they did, every single time they told you that your drawing sucks or that you couldn't be yourself, that's another wall. And after that, no, man, Ryan, this is not what. So after that, you're like, I'm not creating anymore. I know that what I'm going to produce is nothing, and you're not inside that vulnerable spot that we talked about
Yeah,
earlier.
you truly can't force it. The analogy I'll give to my students is I'll be like, who's like getting ready to wash the dishes, and then your mom will say like, hey, can you wash the dishes? And then you'll be like, I'm not washing the dishes. And it's it's like a lot of us are like that, right? It's like we
No,
want
but
to
yeah,
create, we want to do this, we want to do that, but don't tell me what to create.
yeah,
It's and that I think is part of the process because again, we talked about how art is truthful.
Mhm.
If you're being told what to create, then you're automatically being untrue.
Yeah,
And good art moves people because it communicates a truth to them. And it might not be on a surface level, but communication is so much more layered than the words that we use to each
yeah,
other. right?
for
And
sure.
that's what I love about visual art specifically.
Yeah.
Is,
Wow, that's so true.
it
That is
speaks to
so
you
true.
or
Yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Um, man, so much stuff to say. I find that it's for sure it's the same thing for you because you're laying it out in the same fashion for sure, whether it's music, whether it's the Aliens, whether it's even with your student, because that's a form of art, the way you present your class, the way you do all your teachings, how you organize the entire class or what you're going to do for the set of 1 hour, 45 minutes. I find that I am attack this video editing, this whole thing, whatever you call it, the very same thing as I did back in the kitchen. So it's the same approach in terms of, and very oftenly, and again, I'm working with a new software program that's called Adobe Premiere Pro, and it's the learning curve is super steep, right? Because there's no presets, you just go. And before I used to have DaVinci Resolve, whatever. That's really easy. So long story short, it's the same drive of me hitting a wall. I'm like, okay. But then when I'm fatigued and I'm really 4 days deep into this, that's all I did. And the result still is far from what I want, but still I know that this is my drawing. And I know that in 2 weeks is going to be most probably better. And maybe 3 weeks is going to go in curse, but I know it's going to be like HBAR's price or whatever. At one point, still is going to come on the run up, right? But when you zoom out, you go, oh, wow, this is, yeah.
Yeah, I've been going through something similar with my AI art process. I've sent you some of the stable diffusion stuff that I'm working on, and it's
amazing,
mind-boggling stuff. But it's the same thing. It's like I struggle with the idea at times of perfection. That's why I talk about it so much, right? It's like sometimes I want this perfect idea or this to feel like I've mastered this program before I like take that next step with it. And I am careful with that. But I do have a rule that I use that I think would be helpful for some people in the creative process. I use what I call the 98% rule. If something is 98% done in my mind, I'm done and I move on to my next project.
Yeah.
I know it's for some people, they say, oh, well, how come you won't finish that last 2%? That last 2% it is impossible. You'll never get it all. You might only get 1%. And that last 1% is going to take you 2 times as long as it did to get you to the 90.
Yeah, because it gets narrower.
Yeah, exactly. So like, it's just one of my life rules. Like if I get to a point where I'm like, okay, like this is done, it's done. And I stop. And then even if I look at it in the future, I'll want to fix it. I'll want to change it.
For sure.
That part's broken. I don't like that part. It's like, it's done. It's like, you cannot, it's over now. And then I move on to the next thing. And that's something that's really helped me. And I think a lot of people struggle with perfectionism and completing projects for that reason. And you'll never complete anything if it has to be perfect because perfection doesn't exist.
It changes all the time. As we speak right now, it changes all the time. And I think there's a concept too in sports where it's pretty much the same thing. It's the 85% rule where, you, especially for, when you're not in the team, like say gymnastics or whatever, you give your 85%. And this very oftenly, and I know if you play sports or whatever, you're going to be able to project it. If you play 85% and you're a high-end athletic woman, man out there, you're good. You're good. You're gonna wreck it all up. The rest, most probably, is inside your head, and you have to be inside. This puts you inside a flow state where you're getting your all. You still think you got that 15%, but at one point you're like, hey, I'm doing this, and it flows. So there's a part where there's a part where you have to let go, I believe, and just acknowledge the fact that this is a canvas, and well, there's going to be other canvas.
Well, and yeah, exactly, or any art form, it's I think a lot about that. I think people, especially in American culture, where we're very much like pedal to the metal, like give 110%. It's like, well, that's ridiculous because you can't give 110%. That's like my least favorite saying ever. Oh, give 100%. It's like, well, then I don't have, then what about the 5% I need for my family? Like, don't they need more than 5? You know what I mean? It's like, they need more than that, right? So like, you notice that in the creative space too with HBAR, in Web3, it's like,
for sure.
give me everything and right now, right? And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
that's why I always say patience is the most underrated skill in Web3. It's,
yeah.
I think the people that understand the creative process and how difficult it is and how long it takes to do things the right way. And that's what I would always tell anybody who's in that creative process. Oh, how come it takes you so long to create, or you haven't, blah, 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 blah. It's like, it's not a rush, right? It cannot be rushed. Now there are extreme levels. Like you'll see some people will wait 5, 6, 10 years between their products. It's obviously
That's something else. Yeah, yeah, that's something else.
yeah,
But yeah.
that's perfectionism. That's perfectionism. But with that said, it's a lot of those works that then come out of those time periods are masterpieces. So it's I think people just need to understand the time element of the creation process.
Mhm.
It's and you know this yourself, I'm sure, right? It is physically and mentally exhausting.
It is.
And if you're not recuperating yourself, and if you're not taking little creative breaks, and something I really like to do is just go on like it's from a book I read called The Artist's Way. She calls it an artist's date, where you take yourself on a date. Like you can do anything artsy you want. You like go to a concert, you can go to see a movie by yourself, go to Walmart and just buy some random supplies and make something with it. But the idea is you're giving yourself that time to kind of like almost push your own self or create that relationship with your artistic side of yourself that you might not have connected with.
Wow.
So I think those things are really important. Like doing something like that can totally invigorate you. Or even this is
Mhm.
like a really silly example. I'm watching The Last of Us right now, which on HBO, which is
Is it
straight
good? I
fire.
have
Oh,
yet
it's fire.
to.
It's straight fire.
Yeah, okay, cool. Because of course I've seen everyone's going for it, but yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's it's
Yeah, it's great.
it's
Yeah, yeah.
it's
Cool.
it's really really good.
Okay.
And then same thing, even as I'm watching that, like there's all these amazing buildings and like shots
Mhm.
of this like desolated city, and I've just been thinking about the shots all day. I want to create some art that looks kind of like it. So you don't know where your inspirations are going to come from. You just have to surround yourself with people and things that inspire you.
Mhm. Um, yeah. There's to come back to what you were saying, that there's a whole lot that has to do with that 100% thing, and this glass being half empty or half full towards this kind of value, that artistic value that everyone has and that they're spending. I think that has a lot to do also with our relationships with failures. And what's a failure too? You spoke about this, and it's all the G7, right? And mostly like Western, and we have this relationship of with failures or not accomplishing your goal up, whether the first try, second try, and then that doesn't work. Well, bro, that's life. You just go at it, and even though you did it your all, giving 100%, of course, is absolutely it's for me it's unfathomable. If you give you 100%, it's always moving. You cannot. It's give your hardest. It's the same thing. You give your hardest punch one day, the other day after. Did you train that day? Yes, no. It's so many variables, and I think it's again. It comes back to this whole notion of failure again, being vulnerable when you create, and yeah, man. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I've enjoyed our conversation as we kind of have jumped over. I mean, it's something I tell my students literally every day. Like, failure is learning. Like, you don't learn without failure. Um, it's like even like I'm coaching tennis this year, which I'm really excited about.
You're coaching tennis.
Yeah. I'm a pretty good tennis player. I played in high school, and I've played most of my life. But
Age barbarians, you know what to do. Challenge him.
yeah.
Oh, that's cool,
Um,
man. Yeah.
so, but even an example like that is like, I was super cocky my senior year of high school, and there was this kid that he told me he was going to beat me like 6-0, 6-0 in like 20 minutes. I was so mad. And like, I've never been beat so bad at anything in my life.
Oh,
This kid like straight up like humbled me in
wow.
tennis. He was a freshman. I was a senior.
That's great.
And like today, what is it, like 15 years later, I'm still talking about this freaking event. It's like, it made me want to be better. It revealed
For sure.
a lot of
For
holes that I had in
sure.
my game. And sports are a great analogy because that's what our life is like, right? Like we go through these failures and we realize that there are holes in our lifestyle, or
Yeah.
that there are holes in our spirit, right? And it's like through that failure process, that's the only way humans learn. So I think it's the more comfortable you can get with failure, the more successful you'll be. And it's very counterintuitive, but I say that to my kids literally every day, like fail gracefully and a lot.
They're gonna be I mean, they're gonna be powerful because of that. And man, I mean, because for me, I wanted to ask you where this comes from, and it's like an exchange, right? Where for me, it comes from a lot of things, mostly ego, for sure. That is very well balanced with altruism, because I genuinely like people, and man, I that high five that that I always talk about, or this this peace sign that I always that to me, that's my candy, because it balances out everything else that's centered on me, and that's my drive. And of course, I've had many fails, and that's my forever burn. Because often, and I used to be a teacher for 2 years, kitchen classes, and the class lasts for like 2 years and whatever. And the thing I always told the student, I only had one class actually that lasted 2 years, but it was really cool, like from the beginning up to the end. What I was always telling them is that it's not about passion. Passion is for Instagram. Passion is for socials. It's for when you have dinner with your parents, your families. You go to answer the right thing, right? Down the road. It's what's driving you, even when you don't want to, even when it's tough, even when there's 20 rocks in your socks, and you're right, and nothing works. That's that, and you keep on going. This is it. Keep up. If you keep up, I'll bet everything you found it. And that for me is this precise, call it pain, whatever, this burn, and yeah. What is there something that correlates?
I know exactly what you mean. I call that the fire for me. It's just like or feeling fired up. But no, I mean, it's the way you're thinking of it is exactly the way that I think of it. I try to remind myself, and I try to tell my students all the time, like, don't ride on your talent, don't ride on your intelligence. These are static. They don't change, right? Like, the only thing that you can change is your effort. Your effort level, your dedication to how much you want something. And that's ultimately, I think, what people miss in the process is it's not necessarily about how talented you are at something. It's truly, how bad do you want it? Like, do you really want it? And that's what I'll say to my students all the time. I'll be like, I want to be in the NFL. And I'll be like, do you though?
Yeah.
Because you know what that means, right? So like, if you're really saying that, then you're signing up for 10 years of extremely hard work, wildly hard work, world-class level hard work. And I think that's the biggest piece. And then I think that's where people get upset with themselves is, Sophocles talks a lot about that, about the idea of not reaching your potential in life, and knowing that as an older person. And that's something I think, I love philosophy. And that's something I think a lot about, right? Is a lot of us know that we have these talents and we could go get these things if we could just go do it,
Yeah. But yeah, there are so many distractions. Right. And that goes with the flow of information we're suffering, quote unquote, nowadays, because socials, because whatever. But really, when you shut it down and you focus up on whatever you want to do, it's insane how easy it all becomes, right? Because you don't have talk, you don't have all the socials, that you have to just focus in and just do it and just accomplish amazing things. And that takes time, and that takes lots of dedication. Yeah,
it's a process. It's a lifelong process. It's I think it's ultimately something that can and should be enjoyed. It's at least for me, it kind of falls over into a philosophy of life for me, right? It's like we have such a short amount of time to interact with each other and to achieve our goals and our dreams, and it's a flash, So the more you can focus on living the kind of life that you want, and I think people get focused on goals, like, I want to make $1 million, or I want to do this or that. It's like, how do you want to live your life, or like, how do I want to experience this wild ride that I get here on this earth? And that's what I think is beautiful about art, is it starts to bleed over into the way that you think about life and the world.
Yeah, I agree.
It's something I talk to my students a lot about, because like they don't think about next week. It's like, let
Yeah,
alone next year, 10 years from
yeah,
now.
for sure. Well, they're kids. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. So it's
Yeah.
something, as we get older and more mature, I think we can be more conscious about trying to
Mm.
live the way that we want to live. And I try to live like an artist, and what that means for me.
Yeah. You've brought it's culture. That's culture right away. You've brought this culture inside the ecosystem right away when you came into with Alienz and other projects, of course, that you're coming in after. Where you at right now? What are you creating in terms of still inside the NFT base? Is that still ongoing?
Oh yeah,
how do you feel into it? Yeah,
absolutely. I'll be a lifelong creator
yeah,
in Web3. It's right now I'm biting off probably more than I can chew, and I'm happy to do it, to be honest.
yeah.
Because
Go.
again, like what we've talked about before, it's I have big goals, and I'm patient in achieving them. But right now, so for those who don't know, basically Aliens was my first project, and then Samurai Z was kind of an extension of that universe. The story being aliens had like taken over the human cities, and then there are these like remaining clans that live for Samurai Z. So I'm actually working on a really big endeavor right now, which is I'm trying to create. I'm working on a graphic novel called Samurai Z. Um, so my goal is a full-length graphic novel that's AI illustrated, and basically the way that it'll work is like you'll get like a PDF for like a version of the actual graphic novel, and then you'll have all the different art pieces attached, so that you can have that in your collection. And
Wow.
it's a huge undertaking. It's going to take me about 6 months probably. My goal is midsummer. And outside of that, I'm just really continuing to try to build just people getting to know me and the kind of artist that I am, but trying to connect with more communities. So I have two really exciting collabs that are in the works right now. I don't have official announcements for them. Maybe I could do it. I'll let you text. I'll let you send it out next week.
Sure.
We're two pretty big
Come
names.
around. Yeah, sure. Come around next time.
Two pretty big names. And one is we're going to do like a reverse artist, where I'm going to do some stuff inspired by his style, and then the reverse. And then the other one, I'm actually taking some base work and adding kind of my own flair and style to it, and kind of like upscaling it into AI and adding AI elements. So those are my short-term goals. So
Okay.
crunch the collabs. That's my short-term goal. Current long-term goal is the full-length graphic novel. And in my opinion, a goal that is longer than a year away is not a goal at all. It's a dream.
It's a dream.
So
Yeah,
I don't plan. My short-term goals are within 3 months, and then my long-term goals are within a year.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we're going to be here for it 100%, man, just like we were, since day zero. Again, I want to take the time just to say how much I appreciate the friendship that we have. You've been supportive, and vice versa, of course, because that's how it is. Since the day you arrived, I have only but great words to say towards the work ethics, and especially how you do it, man. I'm really annoying with this, but positively driven to me is everything. You can slay all you want. If you do it, you're like, well, that's not it for me, but you do it really well, man. So mad respect for everything that you do. Best of success for the next 3 months, short term and this year, man. Ryan, thank you so much for passing by the show, man. It's always fun, always a pleasure.
Yeah, man. Same here. I've really truly enjoyed getting to know you, and just the HBAR community in general is just unreal. So yeah, I'll keep you updated with stuff as we kind of follow along. If anyone wants to follow me on Twitter or hop in the Discord, I'm always around. I'm always here to answer questions. I think something that separates me in this space is I'm truly here for the art, truly. Right. So I think a lot of people say that. Yeah, I think a lot of people say it, but I hope you guys will follow along. Phil, you're the best, man. Keep crushing it, Phil.
Thanks. Have a great evening, brother.
All right, brother. See you soon, man. Thank you again.
Ciao. Ryan, thank you so much for your presence today on the show. That was a great one. You're truly a brother of mine. I respect your craft. I think the artistic journey that we all have is so important, and that we tend to mitigate the risk that we have instead of really diving deep into failures and to understand the process, the journey of it all when it's so important. And especially inside the education system, that is so crucial that, there needs to be some kind of new way just to propel the fact that, hey, this is your journey, this is your type of art, no matter what you're doing. NFT project, drawing, you're painting, you're hustling, you're an athlete. Everything is possible if you find your own way out here, out there, anywhere, in here, in this show. And I will see you on the next show.